My name is Christine Murphy. I'm going to give you a brief overview of my unit lesson, which I have titled Creating Art with Meaning, Awareness Through Identity. So I'm going to start with how I do my assessments for my unit. So I like to do formative and summative assessment for all of my art lessons. For my formative assessments, I found success with checking for understanding with students. Progress photos is really big. If it's a lengthy assignment, I like to do 25, 50, and 75% progress checks. So that's weekly. They would turn in a photo of their artwork and where they were at. I also check for understanding through completing graphic organizers. If we do a compare and contrast or a group discussion, I provide them with the resource, they fill it out. Completion shows that they have understanding. And then for all of my assignments, which you'll see examples of here in the PowerPoint, I like to do an artist critique. So have the students reflect on their artwork, talk about what went well, how they could revise their artwork, what inspired them about their work of art. I also do roundtable discussions where the students will have more one-on-one critiques with their peers. We do group critiques. I have, especially my advanced students and my AP students, they will do group critiques so they could talk to each other out loud. It's a physical as well as a social experience. And then, of course, I have rubrics. So here's an example of a rubric that I would use for all of my lessons in this unit. So it's going to do several things. One is going to check for understanding if the students are able to use the vocabulary correctly, imagination, right? I want to make sure that their thoughts and concepts are original ideas, they're original works of art. I'm also checking for time on task, right? So students have all of these different variables or things that can be distractors in the classroom. So checking to make sure that they have proper studio habits is a really big deal. I'm also checking for craftsmanship, right? How well did they put their project together? Cleanliness, that's really important. So this is a basic rubric that I would use for all of my lessons in this unit. Another way that you could do assessment is how you share your work. So there's many different ways I found success with sharing all these lessons through my unit that I've actually done in class. So you have your traditional method where you set up a workspace in your classroom where you could have a formal critique or a gallery walk. And then online has been really helpful for me. My school provides us with Canvas, similar to Google Classrooms, where we can have a discussion post, students can upload their responses, and then I can require students to reply to other students' posts. If you don't have access to that, Google Slides is absolutely amazing. You can actually create individual virtual slides and classrooms, embed them in your courses or on web pages if you use that. And then in live, real time, students have access to other students' artwork and they can upload, respond. It's pretty awesome. So here's my unit. I have 4 lessons, each with a broad title, but creating quality lines, abstract art, social emotional learning, and identifying our identities through crisis. So this is my first lesson, creating quality lines. So I am starting backwards. This is one of my students' final works of art. So it's kind of like our own twist on Zentangles. So here are some other student examples that I thought were very successful. And basically with this assignment, they are learning how to use quality lines, right? Lines are the basic foundation for creating artwork, creating anything that has meaning, mood, emotion, movement, any of the principles of design or the elements of art. The foundation is lines. So having the students understand what's important is the first element of art for me, and this was that project. So I gave them resources, recreating lines, and then practicing creating Zentangles and using a matrix to help them recreate that. The students then got to pick, they looked at this artist, Mahi Abudal, and she makes these amazing Zentangles, and they almost come off the paper. So using her as a source of inspiration, the students then found different animals. I had them all printed out for them, and they were basically able to recreate their own version of a Zentangle using what we had learned through lines, and it was very, very successful. My second lesson is based on abstract art. So here is an example of a student artwork, and what I wanted them to create was a sense of mood or emotion through, again, using the elements of art, starting with line, creating shape and color. We studied different color theories, principles, and then the students put it together to see if they could create a mood or an emotion. Here again are some student examples, very successful works of art. And I used a lot of resources. We talked about the psychology of color. I had them make thumbnail sketches. If you're familiar with the show Parks and Recreation, I even showed them like a clip of Tom Haverford right here. He gets emotional over an abstract work of art. So just showing how students can see that people can get really emotional from looking at artwork. And that was the overall theme and goal of this work of art. We looked at artists, Janet Skates and Elizabeth Chapman. They did a really good job showing color and shapes and creating mood and emotion. Obviously very happy in these two particular pictures, but their body of work is really good to filter through to let students see what it is that their end goal will be. For my third lesson, I did a social emotional learning. So here is a student example with their written work of art. I used this with my AP students this year, very successful. What I did was I had them create a collage or a workspace of things that inspired them. So they have these founding principles of knowing how to use color, knowing how to use line to create mood and emotion. They have those fundamental skills already down. So now it was about creating composition, right? We looked over the rule of thirds. We looked how to look through a viewfinder, creating an interesting focal point. And the students then took inspiration photos, whether it was their own pictures, found pictures online, pictures on Pinterest, and then put them together to create these awesome works of art. So I found this artist online, Ben Giles, and he takes different aspects of like social emotional thinking, things about your body, right, about your life, and he puts them together to create these very interesting conceptual works of art. So if you're able to like zoom in and see it, they're talking about like the feelings behind the different things. Like for example, the flower piece, right? It talks about how each flower has a different mood or feeling, right? You never think that like although lilies are so beautiful, they're actually, a flower of death, and that can have a correlation and a symbolism behind it. So for that lesson, my social emotional learning, I really wanted students to be able to focus on self-awareness, right? Things that they like, things that they don't like, and investigate this internal emotional strength or challenge, something that they rationalize with. So while the students searched for images online, they were really putting together a theme or idea that would kind of like wrap up our entire unit in the next lesson, which brings us to our last lesson, which is identifying our identities through crisis. So here is a student's artwork, which I thought was very successful. Her focus was clearly on the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, being African American culture, she has her challenges and identities, but using line, and for some students, they chose to use color, but the examples I have are in black and white, so using line, emphasis, pattern, things that we were building on in the first 3 lessons were able to help us complete the final lesson. I have some other student examples where they focused on another internal turmoil. Here, this one, she's focusing on identity. This one, he's focusing on growth and how you can start from something so small as a tadpole and then transform into a frog, right? And his work kind of then progresses towards like evolution. It gets really deep. So I felt like this was a great final unit or ending part for our chapter. I found this artwork here by Clinton Bowers. His artwork has a story, it has a meaning, it has a purpose. The theme, we kind of started looking at like Keith Haring artwork, Kathy Kolowitz, showing how like lines can create mood and emotion and feelings. And so building on the other things that we were learning, I feel like this was able to help us wrap up with our emotional health and talk about either that or like a social movement. And the students were able to create a choice-based studio project from their reflections or their internal epiphanies. And overall, I thought it was a very successful unit, and I really enjoyed it, and I will definitely do it again. I hope you enjoyed my lesson.